Sarah, welcome to the Scenic Group podcast.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Yay, I'm so excited. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. And how are you?
Yeah, good. I'm actually, I don't know, it's kind of like one of those days where I'm like, everything is going smooth. So I have to stop my mind from like fault picking, like, where's something wrong? I just have to peel or scratch here until I find something that's wrong. This is like, no, we're going with the 2023 vibe of just being like, no, we're going to be chill about this now.
That's good.
But do you know what I mean? Like, is that
Yes.
kind of like,
Yes.
oh, it's kind of like too good to be true or something, like, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it just feels like things are going too smoothly. Something's going to trip up at some points, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it does not. Absolutely. I 100% agree. So, but before we kind of like go deeper into conversation, Sarah, can you please briefly walk us through your story? Like, give us an idea who you are and how you started with your business, how you got where you're today, like the elevator pitch, the pivotal crossroads. You always start with these questions.
Absolutely. But I in my 20s and early 30s, I had a great career as a management consultant, working in IT, traveling around the world, partying, working hard, traveling everywhere, and it was great. And then slowly it started to crumble, and my health started to really get in the way. At first, I thought it was just I wasn't coping with the fast-paced life, but eventually I became aware that it wasn't normal. I had to ask people. I was like speaking to friends and saying, "Do you find that your legs and arms ache all the time as if you've been running a marathon?" And they're like, "No, they don't." And I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe there is something not quite right with me."
Yeah.
And after that, I probably had a good 8 to 10 years of visiting doctors trying to work out what was going wrong. I eventually got diagnosed with ME, which is known as chronic fatigue syndrome. And as a result of that, I lost my career. I could no longer work the hours that were expected. I couldn't travel. And I spent the next 3 months in bed, not being able to really do much at all. Um, I had a family, eventually got back on my feet, got a part-time job. But I always had this urge to do something more. And I started doing my own business. I set up a business making skincare. I
Oh,
made skincare kits, so bath bomb and lip balm kits for children so they could make their own skincare using natural vegan ingredients, all eco-friendly, and started running parties. But I was running a business as I would have worked in my old life, and I went in full throttle. And my pivotal moments came the first Christmas after I launched, and I was getting ready for a Christmas fair and putting all my efforts into it. I already had one frozen shoulder, and as a result of it, of all the repetitive movement and pushing myself too hard, I ended up with a second painful, really, really painful shoulder to the point I couldn't even get myself dressed. I had to go to the hospital in my pajamas to get it checked out because I thought I dislocated my shoulder. I still pushed myself to do the Christmas fair the next day, but completely in pain, lots of medication. And I promised myself that I would not do that again. And so I had to sort of reassess how I was running my business and run it in a way that was chronic illness friendly. I took a look to see if anything was out there, anybody who could support me in my journey, and I couldn't find anybody. So I set about sorting it out myself, and I set up a group for people with chronic illnesses who run their own business, the Entrepreneurs Against the Odds Facebook group. And just having those people in my space just meant that I wasn't alone anymore. People understood what I was going through, and I understood what they were going through. So it was like a mutually supportive group. And I learnt ways to run my business in a way that was chronic illness friendly. So things around how to find the best strategy, how to prioritize my work, how to get as much done in as short amount of time as possible, because when you have a chronic illness, you're quite limited in your time. And from that, I started running workshops and doing mentoring. I also am now supporting organisations who want to better support their employees with chronic illness as well, because that was something that I found was missing when I first was diagnosed with a chronic illness. One step I missed along the way is the fact that actually I have since been diagnosed with other conditions. I'm not personally not convinced I had chronic fatigue syndrome, because I've since been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS syndrome as well. So it might be that I do have ME as well, but who knows? So yeah, I've since, it took about 16 years, I think, from first symptoms to getting diagnosed with POTS and Ehlers-Danlos. So it's been a long journey.
Yeah, I can so relate. Geez, there's always, I mean, yeah. Well, first off, like, congratulations on like putting yourself through all of the medical labyrinth and mad ways of the system, because I know it's really, really tough. And it took me, I don't know, 25 years to get the like the endometriosis diagnosis, and just kind of like an idea of like, oh, actually, no, yeah, thank you for all the times you told me to do yoga or eat more healthy. Thank you very much. So, and kind of like, yeah, doing something with it, not like, like actually like, okay, this is like, this chronic illness I don't know, it's my weakness and it's also my strength, kind of like really turning it around and be like, hey, actually, what can I do with it? Like, I don't just want to like get like wave goodbye to life, but how can I, like, what can I do with it? So, and I'm really excited to go into like how, maybe first, how we can take better care of ourselves as entrepreneurs with chronic illnesses. And also, I'm really curious on, you said one of the things is, surely we're short on time, or we just don't have as much hours that we feel like we're producing our best outcome. But at the same time, there's like this uncertainty, right? You get up in the morning and you're like, it's not a good day today. So
Yeah.
how you work with that, where you don't know, can you perform what you want to perform the next day or not? Like, how do you work with that uncertainty to a level? So I'm really curious about all of those like kind of like strategies you got. And then we can also maybe briefly talk about how businesses, or how we as let's say entrepreneurs, when we hire people with chronic illnesses like copywriters or other service providers, how can we make sure we provide a safe environment for them? I feel that's also very important, because I don't know, I get the impression that a lot of entrepreneurs, like a lot of people with chronic illness, have chosen that path because the corporate route is just not sustainable at all in the current climate. So I'm really curious about those. So how did you kind of like start to take better care of yourself in regards to your business?
First thing that I do for myself and I recommend for clients is to start thinking about putting your well-being first, and then letting your business fit around that. If you aren't looking after yourself, then your business is going to really suffer. So most people, when they're starting a business, will put their business first, and then they'll say, I don't have time to look after myself. I don't have time to do the things that bring me joy. And I think it's really important to switch that round and really start putting yourself first. Write a list of all the things that you want to do for your health, and all the things that bring you joy. And then make sure that you're picking and choosing and putting those into your diary before you do anything else with your business. So if you have some non-negotiables, exercise, getting out in nature, getting that rest, maybe having an afternoon nap, put that in your diary first, and then plan everything else in your business around that. I think if you can do things that bring you joy, then you're going to increase your energy levels. And energy is something that's always a problem when you have an energy limiting issue, such as a chronic illness. So if you can find ways to raise your energy, if you can find ways to make yourself smile in the morning, drink a cup of tea outside, or have a chat with a best friend, that can raise your energy levels, and that can then really help. So it's about putting yourself first, and not feeling guilty for that. I think so many of us, particularly women, I think we
You're
feel
raising a good
guilty
point
about putting ourselves first, and yet everybody else around us will benefit if we do that as well. So our families, our children, our friends will benefit if we start prioritizing our own well-being. We can then be there for them a lot more as well. And as I said, our business is going to really flourish if we look after ourselves. So it's remembering those key points about what does make a difference to our health. And I really do think it's important to start listening to your body as well. So if you're having niggles, or if there's things that you need, so if there's particular foods that you feel that you really need to eat, then listen to your body and what it's trying to tell you. I know that if I'm sitting at a screen too long, I might start getting pain in my eyes, or my shoulders might start aching. And I know that that is a message from my body to me, that if I don't listen and react to it, then I'm going to really suffer for it later. So again, I know that sometimes it's very hard to step away from your desk when you're working on something, but if your body's telling you that's what you need to do, then you do kind of need to take heed of that. And that will mean that later in the day or the next day, you'll actually be able to do a lot more than if you try and persevere and then end up with a migraine or in severe pain. So it's really hard, and it's all about acceptance. It's accepting that you do have limitations, but you can, if you do prioritize your well-being and listen to your body, you can adapt. And you can still get a lot done as well. I find that if I have a day when I'm sitting in front of my computer for 8 hours solid, I can procrastinate quite easily, and I can get distracted, and I end up not particularly achieving loads. And there are days when I maybe have just an hour or 20 minutes or 2 hours, and suddenly, because that's focus time, I can actually get a lot more done than if I was sitting in front of my computer for 8 hours. And I do recommend that if somebody's going to sit down just for a small amount of time, knowing exactly what they're going to work on before you sit down, have a little goal in your mind. What do I want to achieve in this short period of time that I've got available?
Like the task on a post-it or something. Like just really something small that fits on a small post-it, and be like, okay, that's what I want to do, and the allocated amount of time.
Exactly. And do that before you actually sit down at your desk, because if you sit down at your desk without actually knowing what you're going to do, you'll end up doing anything that's in front of you. You'll get distracted by different websites or whatever. But if you actually, before you sit down, write that on your post-its, put it on your computer, then you're going to get a lot more done as well. So I think that obviously we have less time as if you have a chronic illness, and because you do have to take more care of your health, and you might not have enough energy to work a certain amount of hours. But I do think you can achieve so much in a short amount of time if you're focused and have an idea of what you want to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to be really clear, that really helped me to really focus on, okay, what is a task that is absolutely crucial that I do perform this task? There is no way I can delegate that or outsource that or whatever. This is something I have to do as kind of like the queen bee of this operation. And what can I outsource? Where can I ask for help? What are the tasks that need to get done or should get done, but it's not crucial that I do them? And then either get help, like hire someone, or realize, okay, this is just not getting done today. And being cool with that too, right? Like if it's not a crucial queen bee task, it can wait.
Yeah, and I think we find if we actually properly studied what sort of pressures we're putting on ourselves, some tasks you don't actually need to do them. They can. There's a lot of things that you want to do but aren't necessarily moving you towards your goal, but you feel like you should do them because that's what everyone does. And there's also the tasks that we do set ourselves. It's only, obviously we've got client tasks which are different, but a lot of the tasks that we set ourselves it's ourselves putting pressure and giving ourselves a deadline. It's nobody else. So if they do slip a few days, it's not the end of the world. And again, it's accepting that it's not a failure if you don't complete your to-do list. It's being accepting that it doesn't matter. If you set yourself a launch in a month's time and it takes a month and a half, it doesn't matter. That was your deadline, and it can move. So have that sort of flexibility. And I think your question earlier around when you wake up and you don't have the energy to do something, it's understanding that and knowing that you have to have some flexibility in your diary, and know that certain days you can't do certain tasks. So I know that if I'm coming down with a migraine, I certainly can't be doing anything that's going to require a lot of focus. But that's a good day for me to do some more relaxing ideas. And often I get my best ideas when I'm actually relaxing and letting my mind think, or I might have some jobs that I can just do by like just sort of more menial jobs that I can get done when my headache's not too bad. So it's sort of having a flexible approach and knowing what sort of energy you've got and what tasks match that energy, and then making sure you've got plenty of white space in your diary where if something does slip, you've got, I know on Friday afternoon I've got nothing planned in, I can do some catch-up tasks that need to get done. So you're not going to beat yourself up for not completing any work.
Yeah, that's a really good point to kind of like, I mean, always plan with plenty of white space. I mean, that's a good advice anyway, regardless if you're suffering from a chronic illness or not, because to kind of like have that breathing periods, because we need that. Our brain we're not productive for 8 hours a day. I mean, that's a corporate, like, I don't know, that's not going to happen. And also, of what you said, right? Like maybe if you're planning something like a launch of a new service or a new product, and you divide it into all the little endless tasks you want to do, maybe you also color code them by energy and level involvement. Like, I mean, that is obviously gonna depend, it's different for everyone, but for me, I know, okay, like actually showing up for like an Instagram live, that's high energy. That I really need to be well to do that. But doing things like the graphic design of things, or the Pinterest templates, Instagram templates, all those sorts of things, I can do that when I'm low energy, because I've been doing graphic design for over, I don't know, 20 years. Like that's just easy. So to really kind of like go through the tasks and color code them might be a good hack as well, to know, okay, today is like, I don't know, an energy code blue kind of day and pick something of that list. So you're still moving towards where you want to go, but knowing, okay, I don't know, green and yellow are not going to happen today.
Yeah, and I think as well, sometimes you have courage. Generally, if you're feeling well, you might have courage to contact people, and on other days you just want to be a bit more introverted, and that's a different type of energy as well. You want to just do more reading and studying. So I think trying to understand your energy levels and maybe track them, and then as you say, apply that to your to-do list using different colors. That's a brilliant way of approaching your week.
That just reminds me, when I have introvert days, I always focus on search engine optimization.
Oh yes, yeah,
because
brilliant.
that's such a great introvert task, because I don't know, and then go through all tags of my images and like keywords of blog posts and all those sorts of things, where I just like, okay, I don't have to, I just have to deal with words today, no people.
And TikTok is great for that, isn't it?
Yeah, or like bookkeeping or those kinds of things, where just like no. Yeah, and again, it does require you to know yourself really well.
Yes.
And to know, like, and to be honest with yourself, right? I think that's probably almost the harder part at times, I feel.
Yeah, but I think that comes down to acceptance as well, doesn't it? That
True,
if you
yes.
accept that this is your life at the moment, obviously things change, you can get better, you can get worse, you just don't know. But if you can accept that that is how you're feeling, how you have to work at the moment, then I think it's easier to then have that knowledge about yourself.
Yeah, to be, as I agree, it really boils down to acceptance, and be like, hey, I accept the situation as it is. And I love that you said it's a temporary situation. You don't know, no one knows, right? You could be perfectly well, and the next day something's, you never know. And like, what is helping me as well is kind of like also kind of like it is what it is approach, right? Like to be like, this is just the current situation, and regardless, I am well, all is well, and we're just dealing with this now.
I think that thing about it being a temporary state was something that was really, really important to me, because I used to find that if I had a bad patch with my health and
Mm-hmm.
struggling with a lot of pain and exhaustion, I would then sort of spiral, because I thought, oh God, this is getting worse. And over time, I came to realize that it was actually temporary blocks of time that I'd have these relapses, and then I'd slowly recover, and then another point I'd have another relapse. And now I know that if I do have a few bad days, it's not forever. It doesn't mean that my illness is getting worse. It just means that for a small amount of time, I'm going to be feeling worse, and I can cope with that. And I think knowing that I can cope with that, and it isn't the end, that things can get better, has really made a huge difference in me accepting my illness and being able to run a business.
Yeah, but that is strongly linked to you going through that experience, you going through a bad patch and realizing, oh, okay, there's a bad patch. These are the signs. Now it's my time to take better care of myself, and I know things will improve. Which is, we know this now because we're like old pros in dealing with chronic illnesses. But if you have a client who is new at this and who hasn't really strengthened that experience, that muscle, what are you telling them?
Is to have that reminder almost like an affirmation, that this is a phase. And one of my favorite phases through illness and also through having my children is, this too shall pass. Knowing that
Yes.
every situation is temporary. And I think generally in life, even if you haven't got a chronic illness, life goes through so many different phases, and everyone has difficult moments, and it is temporary. There's always a way out. Even really, really hard situations, it's not never end. There are ways out of things in general. So it's knowing that, and just repeating as an affirmation, this will pass, this will pass. It can really help to boost that, knowing that it's not permanent.
And also trying to like flip the script, right? Like, I mean, I know it sounds so like such a cheesy Pinterest quote slash bad ripoff of The Secret or whatever. Like, you cannot control what is happening, like how your body reacts to certain things, but ultimately you can decide, okay, do I want to wallow in this, or do I flip it and be like, it's okay. I'll be okay. I'll see this is just a scenario that's happening to let my body know I have to take better care of myself in the future.
Yeah. And it's okay to have bad days when you feel fed up with it all. And that will, having that feeling, it will pass. But I think we all have every right to think, oh, this is awful, why me? But knowing that it's not always going to be that way just definitely helps.
Yeah, I agree. So in terms of really, I'm curious of, when we talk business, we said it's already important to plan like lots of waste space, to kind of like have these, so you can plan with how your energy levels are each day. What are other, I don't know, I don't want to call them hacks, but what are other ways you do yourself, or you recommend your clients to kind of like have really to work a successful business on really their own terms, and really almost kind of like, this is the best business life and I love it? And what are kind of like the steps, that maybe the simple steps we haven't thought about that you can implement easily?
I think probably one of the main things to do is to think about your strategy and make sure that it's a strategy that works with the chronic illness. If you're trading time for money, then, and you have limited energy, then that's not going to work, because you don't have you won't ever be able to grow that business because your time and your energy is limited. So thinking about ways of changing it. So one example of that is, I said earlier that when I started my first business, I was running birthday parties and workshops, and obviously that is a huge drain on my energy. So my plan and what I'm doing now is franchising that part of the business so that other people can run those parties on my behalf, and I can still grow the business and be proud of what I've achieved, but I don't actually have to do that myself. So either thinking about if you can employ people or change the model completely, do sort of a more one-to-many approach, franchising, just sort of thinking about how best can my business suit my health, and looking at it that way can really make a big difference.
Oh, yes, and I especially love the franchise and to really think about this very early on how do I need to structure certain things that, and I mean, even if you're not going to franchise, right? Like maybe it can feel really helpful to think as if you would franchise, but even if you have no intentions, but to kind of like, what is part of that? It's part of like, it's documenting your process. It's documenting your workflows and documenting your systems. So even when you're not franchising, but when you then decide, oh, I need help, and you bring in like, let's say a VA or an OBM, you already have like so much information collected on how you run your business that you can just be like, there you go.
Yeah, very much so.
Let me know if you have any questions.
Right. Also, while you're documenting that process, you can often find ways of doing things quicker as well, because if you're actually focusing on, okay, what is my process for onboarding a new client? Is there anything that you can then take a step back and say, okay, is there anything I can do quicker? Is there a way of automating part of this process so I don't actually have to be involved in that? And all those, they're often in the processes that we were running without any thought to them, there are lots of energy drains. If you sit back and think about exactly what my process is, you can get rid of those energy drains and make them a lot more efficient, which is particularly important when you've got chronic illness.
Yeah, especially. And I'd say go over those systems once a year, because how it usually happens, right? You start out, you have a couple of clients, you don't need that many systems, because I can take care of onboarding a new client a month, 2 new clients a month, whatever. But there will be a time where like, this is, nope, not gonna happen. So the earlier you start documenting all of that and do a yearly like review or audit of all those things, I'd say the better, because you're realizing, as you said, okay, where are kind of like my energy drainers? What, like, which plugs do I have to pull, or where do I like, energy drain? Oops.
Yeah, very much so. And I think if you can, even when you have just got 1 or 2 clients, if you can think of a way that you would do that in the future. So imagine that you are suddenly growing and you need to adapt, because actually once you get to that point where you are growing and you've got all these clients, it's very hard to then take that step back to put those systems in place.
And also it's probably happening really fast. You will not really have the proper time to implement systems with a clear head, because you just be like, chasing after things. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking back, I do not regret bringing on an accountant very early on and automate as much as possible super early on.
And
everything, like, just not sending out the email personally.
Definitely, it makes such a difference. And it can take, I know a lot of people a lot of my clients say they don't have enough time to do these things, but often if you spend an hour setting up your email automations now, then over the next, even within a week or 2, it's going to have paid back that time. So I often talk to my clients about setting things up that your future self will thank you for, and it's thinking about yourself in the future. What are you going to say to today? Thank you for doing that, it's made my life so much easier.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question to really ask yourself. Okay, what would be my future business I'd be super thankful for that I took the time now to set up? But it's always with those kinds of things, right? Like there seem like a lot at the beginning, but when you look at them over time, they're like, why haven't you started sooner?
Yeah.
Right? It's yeah. I mean, that's always kind of like where I have the conversation with people about branding, for example, right? Like, oh, but yeah, it's so much work, and like, yeah, but it's the initial amount of work, it's just only gonna increase, and it's not gonna go away. It's also just gonna, you'll have more things to take care of once your business grows. So rather sit down at the beginning, do properly, and then let it grow with you, instead of, oh, okay, I now have like all these gazillion things. They're all mix and match, pick and mix, and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
That's always, I don't know, interesting thing. We're kind of like, no, I'm not dealing with that. Let's there's no instant gratification in doing that. Let's just not do that.
Yeah.
I feel that's really something that's really one of our strengths, maybe, with entrepreneurs or people with chronic illness in general. We're really learning to become really good at doing like, to not go for like the instant win, for the quick win, but for like the long-term win, because we know the quick win might feel good, but it's more important that we focus on the long run.
Yeah. And if you can set up good foundations for your business, which obviously takes longer, then it's going to, over the long term, it's going to be a lot more solid business model, and get much more reward for it. So it's definitely worth putting those foundations in place and making them as solid as possible.
So we talked about in general, you mentioned like the general business model. Yes, I agree. And we like talked about systems and processes like automatizations. What would you say are also part of like the foundations you've mentioned that it's best to take currently on in your business?
I think it's worth early on thinking about your boundaries and about what you are willing to do. So think about what you want from life. What do you want from your business? Are you doing your business to give you some freedom of time? And if that's the case, what does that look like? Are you looking to have evenings off? Are you preferring to work evenings and take the day off if that's when you feel better at working? And sort of really take that time to work out what you want your business to look like. Because again, that will affect your business model as well. Knowing what days you're working, how many hours you want to work. And then very early on, making sure that your customers are aware of that as well. You can set up automatic responses to emails which state the hours that you're working, and you could say, oh, I plan to get back to you within X number of hours or X number of days. And having that sort of communication early on can make people adapt to that very easily. So a lot of people complain that people expect instant responses nowadays, because of the invention of mobile phones with emails and things like that. But I found that if you tell people and set their expectations, they don't expect you to respond immediately. They know that these are the hours that you work, the days that you work, and that you will respond as soon as you get back to the office. And setting that expectation early on can make a big difference. But you have to do it for yourself as well. You have to say, if you're telling customers that I'm only responding during these hours, and they send something quite inconsequential out of hours, then don't respond to that immediately, because then you're setting their expectations that you will respond straight away. So it's being quite strict with yourself to a certain extent, and your clients.
Yeah. Oh, I loved both points. And yes, boundaries surely work both ways, right? Like, I mean, if you're getting in a client out of office hours and you respond immediately, you're setting a precedent. So next time the client will expect you to respond anyway, right? Immediately, although you maybe said something else before. And the other point, expectation management, that is, so I've also found that to be so crucial. Like my clients, for example, they know I'm not going to respond on Mondays. Mondays is my day with my kid. I'm not available on Mondays. They also know I'm going to reply within certain time frames. And honestly, if they have a problem with that, then it's I don't know. I'd say I'm also partly to blame, because something in my lead to client funnel is not working properly, because there are not my right fit clients. Right? Because at one point I was maybe like, I don't know, thinking, oh, you know, it would be cool to work with this client. They're like, oh, the money would be cool. It would be nice to have the money or whatever. And kind of like go against my gut of like, this is not our ideal client. And then, I don't know, there's usually a boundary issue, like approaching on the horizon in my experience.
Yes.
Yeah, that is so crucial. And you can do little things. And I also found it that if you really, talk about and make it really clear, I never had a concern with the client. I never had that raised as an issue or anything like that. It's just like,
absolutely.
okay. Yeah, Jen is on holidays. Jen is not available on Mondays, whatever. Yeah.
I think the only problem comes if you don't communicate that, because then people expect you to respond. But if you're clear and upfront, people do accept that, and they can choose not to work with you if they don't, and that they wouldn't be the right fit for you anyway. So it's good to set those expectations.
I once joked to a client, like she's like, what if, like, I said, look, I'm on vacation. She's like, I know, that's cool. And she's like, and then she's kind of like half joking. She's like, but what if, like, I don't know, the roof's on fire? I'm like, please call the fire brigade. Right? Like, I mean, if it's life or death, then like call someone who can actually deal with it. Most likely will not be your service provider.
True.
So I'm curious. So we have talked about like the foundations and the little things you can do, and that it's a lot to do also with mindset and how you approach boundaries, and what is kind of like your, I mean, we always I don't know, I've never met a service provider who has like who has no issue with boundaries, especially when it kind of like comes to the over delivering bit, where you're like, yeah, sure, I can look at that, or yeah, sure, we can do another like video call or whatever. How are you handling that?
Yeah, I think I'm probably on the side of over delivering as well. But I think I'm okay with that, in terms of, I think that's my personality anyway, in that I kind of often want us to do that extra step. So I think as long as you aren't pushing yourself too hard, and it is leading you towards your goals. I think that the difficulty is if it's taking you away from your goals, and you're saying yes to something that's not actually part of your plan. I think that's really important to avoid that when you have a chronic illness. And I think often we get distracted by shiny objects and different offers and things like that. And it's really important, particularly when you have a chronic illness, to know where you're heading and make sure that everything you're saying yes to is taking you in that direction.
Yeah, so we're circling back to being really, really clear why you're in business for. What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Is it more time with your family? Is it taking care of a loved one? What is it to and then really be clear on also on your values, on the way how you're achieving what you're set out to achieve. Yeah, I love that. And it's, again, and then accepting that and being at ease with it. Those are really kind of like the bits to it. Oh,
and learning to say no as well to things that aren't taking you where you want them to be going.
Yeah, which is general advice.
Yeah.
If you know this
it's hard
is not...
sometimes as well, isn't it?
Oh God, yes. But I'm always kind of like looking at it, okay, what if I say yes to this? Because if maybe this is hard when you're starting out in your business, but at a certain time when you've been in the game for a year or two, you have a pretty high predictability rate of how this is going to play out. And then you're like, okay, if no, if it's just disrupting your peace of mind, no, not worth it. No,
exactly,
not worth it. And And I had that with a client of mine once, where she was like, yeah, but I want to do it. I need the money. I'm like, fair, yeah, okay, cool. If you say you want to have the money, you need the money, then work that project. Just make sure you have firm boundaries and you're like protecting yourself all through that project. And what happened? The project went fine. She was firm on her boundaries. But what happened? That like not so great client was really happy with her work. So he referred her to all his peers who were also not all that great clients, like overall. She was like, he keeps on referring me clients, and I know this is like a good, bad problem to have, but they're not the people I enjoy working with. It's really exhausting. And I always have to be like on guard with my boundaries. But he keeps like, I cannot tell him to no, to say to no, don't bring me. So that can also happen, right? Like the people
takes you
get
off in a completely different direction.
Yeah. And suddenly you're like, wait, no, I did not want to go into this industry. I did not want to work with this type of client. How the hell did we get here?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now kind of like let's switch quickly to before to kind of like end our conversation. If there's a chance that you're listening to us and you're not suffering from a chronic illness, but maybe you're consider working with someone who is disclosed that they have a chronic illness, what can we do as entrepreneurs who work with freelancers or hire part-time team members? What can we do to establish a good work environment for service providers, entrepreneurs with chronic illness?
I think if somebody has disclosed that they've got a chronic illness, then they're okay for you to ask questions and just ask them whether they need some sort of additional time or if a different type of working process. I think every chronic illness is different, and everybody with that chronic illness has different reactions to it as well, and different ways of working.
Everyone's kind of like the expert on their type of chronic illness. So
but even for them as well. So someone else with POTS might show up in different ways to how I deal with it. So it's worth having that conversation and not making any assumptions, because I think people have different ways of working. But it's good to have flexibility if you're working with somebody with a chronic illness, because there are days when people, as you said earlier, that you just get up and you can't really do much because the pain is too much, or the brain fog is too heavy, or the exhaustion is just too bad. So having flexibility and setting longer lead times is a good way. So if you are asking somebody to do a piece of work for you, just understand that maybe they might have longer lead times to deliver it, and not put pressure on them to deliver it sooner than what they've offered. So understanding that if they've given you a deadline, that there's a reason for that, and you trying to bring that forward isn't going to help anybody, because they might not be able to produce such a good piece of work if you're trying to put pressure on them to deliver it quicker than they want to. So having that flexibility and understanding, and I think just having those conversations, asking whether there's anything that could be useful. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's going to be going into a hospital, but he still wants to be able to work while he's in hospital. So he's now talking to his clients about the fact that he wants to know upfront what work is needing to be delivered, so that he can plan for that before he goes into hospital, and make sure that he can still deliver it while he's in hospital. So he's asking for the work up front, and then making them aware that there might be some changes depending on how long his stay is going to be and how well the operation goes. But he's been quite upfront about it, and his clients are responding very positively to that. So if you do have somebody approaching you in that way, just to have an open mind and understand that this is that they do produce good work, and that you can be flexible and work around their requirements.
And also maybe think about your timelines, right? Because there's a high chance your timelines are arbitrarily set as well, and you're putting yourself under unnecessary stress anyways, right? If you like, I want to have this done by the end of the week, well, what is really going to happen if that's not the case? Exactly. Right? Like often we're just having this we're just fixated on a timeline that is not in our best interest, and Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're like our own worst nightmares. So yeah, I think those are all absolutely brilliant points. And to really, yeah, like be transparent, be open, don't shy away from the conversation. Um, and just be curious and see, like, I don't know, maybe also, let's say if you're looking for different service providers, and actually say, okay, I'm going to give someone a chance and just see how it goes. Right. And knowing that, especially now, what we said before, the current corporate climate is not, in most companies, is not very much in favor of people with chronic illness. So for some of them, their livelihood totally depends on their self employment, on their entrepreneurship, and really say, okay, I'm gonna give this person a try. Their knowledge seems impeccable. They seem really cool to talk to. Let's go.
I think people with chronic illness also develop strengths as a result of their illnesses as
God,
well.
yes.
So we have to learn how to adapt very quickly to changing situations and how to make the best out of a situation as well. And those are brilliant skills to bring into a business, and the
Absolutely.
determination and resilience and all those sorts of things are absolutely brilliant for anybody else's business as well. So they might have the knowledge, but they've also developed these additional skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. So to kind of like end our beautiful conversation, thank you so much, Sarah. You brought us, anyone who's listening, you brought a little gift for us. It's a free masterclass. Do you want to tell us something about it?
Yes, I have created a masterclass called the 6 Secrets to Running a Chronic Illness Friendly Business. And it talks you through the different areas that you need to focus on if you want to make your business a success when you're living with a chronic illness. So looking at things like your mental health, your physical health, your productivity and your planning. So a lot of the things that we've discussed today, but we've delved into it a bit more detail. So it's definitely worth a watch.
Perfect. I'm going to link it in the show notes. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So where can people find you online, Sarah, if they decide they want to know more about you?
So if you have a business and you have a chronic illness, then you can come and join the free Facebook group, which is called Entrepreneurs Against the Odds. And I have a website, which is excelagainsttheodds.co.uk. And you can also find me on Instagram with the same name as well.
Perfect. We're going to link all those, which is brilliant.
Thank you.
So I always have one final question before I let anyone off. What book are you currently reading, Sarah?
I am reading a book called Energize by Simon Alexander Ong. I've got it just next door to me. And it's all about how to find your energy and how to increase your energy. So looking at things like making sure that your space and your mind is clutter-free, that can elevate your energy, and looking at bringing joy into your life. So I'm still quite early on into that, but I'm really fascinated about how, obviously, I have an energy limiting illness, but there are ways that even if I haven't got physical energy, I can increase my mental energy. And I think when you've got a business, that is brilliant.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about capacity building. I love that. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me on the Sydney Group podcast. It was a blast to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Jennifer. It's been a delight speaking to you.